Murphy's bar near the San Diego Naval Base was loud that night. Laughter, music, the hum of stories from men who thought they'd seen it all. "Hey, waitress. Another round." The command came from Jake Morrison, 28 years old, proud SEAL operator, radiating the kind of arrogance that fills a room before he even speaks. In the far corner, Kesha Williams stirred her whiskey slowly, watching the ice melt into amber swirls. At 35, she had learned not to waste energy on fools. She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. She already knew the type, young, loud, and drunk on their own importance. "I don't think she heard you, Morrison," laughed Tony Costanos, his teammate, giving him a nudge. "She must be deaf as well as..." "As well as what?" The voice cut through the chatter like a blade. Kesha turned, calm and deliberate, her eyes locking on them with a quiet power that made Morrison's next word die in his throat. "Nothing, ma'am. We were just joking." Morrison tried to sound charming, but the smirk on his face betrayed him. He was used to being the predator in any room. Kesha turned back to her drink, unimpressed. That's when Costanos noticed it, the ink peeking from beneath her sleeve. "Man, check that out," he whispered, nodding toward her arm. "What kind of tattoo is that?" Morrison's grin widened. He smelled blood. "Hey, lady," he called louder this time, ensuring the entire bar could hear. "That tattoo on your arm, what unit is that?" "Never seen it before." No answer. Just the faint clink of ice against glass. He stood up, swaggering toward her. "I'm talking to you. What's that eagle? Or is it just a fake tattoo to impress people?" The chatter in Murphy's faded into a hush. Eyes turned toward the confrontation. Kesha looked up at him fully now, her gaze steady and unreadable. "You think I didn't serve?" she asked quietly, not a question, but a warning wrapped in calm. "No offense," Morrison replied with that same poisoned confidence. "But I know all the units. I've been a SEAL 6 years. Been places you can't even imagine. And that symbol," he pointed, almost touching her arm, "I've never seen it." Costanos joined him, eager for the crowd's attention. "Yeah, seriously, where'd you serve? Quartermaster Administration?" The small laugh that slipped from Kesha's lips was almost inaudible, but it froze every older veteran in the room. It was the sound of someone who'd seen too much. "You really want to know?" she asked softly, standing now, rolling up her sleeve. The tattoo came fully into view, an eagle, intricate and alive with hidden details. "This story," she said, "isn't for boys who play soldier." The air tightened. Morrison's jaw clenched as his pride ignited. "Boys playing, sweetheart?" "I've been on more missions than you've spent years in service," Morrison snapped, stepping closer, breath thick with whiskey and pride. Kesha tilted her head slightly, her calm untouched. "Really? And how many of those missions never officially happened?" The words hit him like a slap. His eyes narrowed. How could she know about classified operations? The bar was silent now. Only the hum of a flickering neon sign filled the tension between them. Morrison laughed it off, patting his chest. "Lady, you're talking to real professionals. No need to make up action movie stories." Costanos raised his glass. "Yeah, you probably serve coffee at a base somewhere, not in combat zones." Kesha said nothing. Her eyes scanned the bar, exits, windows, mirrors, weapons. Every angle catalogued in a second. It wasn't nerves. It was training. Deep, ingrained, and lethal. "See?" Morrison mocked. "Now she's nervous. Caught in her own lie." "You know what's funny," Kesha said quietly, "is how confident you sound about things you don't understand." "That eagle," Costanos interrupted, "the wings are wrong. Anyone who's actually served would know that." "That what?" Kesha asked, rolling her sleeve higher, revealing the full tattoo, feathers, 13 points, coded marks around the wings. Each feather represents one of the original colonies. The position of the wings marks active combat status. These smaller symbols, she pointed, denote missions in unrecognized territories. A heavy silence fell. They had no comeback. Anyone can memorize trivia off the internet, Morrison muttered, but his voice had lost its edge. True, Kesha said, reaching for her wallet. She pulled out an old, faded photo and placed it on the counter. 5 soldiers stood in a barren landscape, surrounded by tech that looked too advanced for its time. Kesha was in the center, younger, fierce, unmistakable. Afghanistan, 2009, she said. Officially, none of us were there. The crowd leaned closer. Even the bartender stopped moving. What unit is that? Costanos whispered, confused. Never seen those uniforms. You shouldn't have, she replied. Some things are classified above your clearance level, kid. The word kid hit Morrison like a punch. At 28, with 6 years of SEAL experience, he wasn't used to being dismissed, especially not by a woman he'd assumed was a civilian. His pride burned hotter than the whiskey in his blood. Listen, he said, lowering his voice to a threat. I don't know what game you're playing, but I know Photoshop when I see it. Anyone can fake a picture. Kesha's eyes darkened slightly. The calm didn't fade, it shifted. It became colder, sharper. Photoshop, she repeated softly, and for the first time, her tone carried something that made even the oldest veterans in the room sit a little straighter. You think I need Photoshop? She stood fully now. Morrison realized too late that he had underestimated her size, her stance, her entire presence. Every movement she made was efficient, economical, the way only a trained operative moves when violence is an option they don't need to prove. You know what separates people like you from people like me? She asked, her voice low but unwavering. You learn to be soldiers. I was born one. Morrison felt a chill slide down his spine, though he didn't move. You're bluffing, he said, forcing a smirk. Women don't serve in special combat units. Women don't officially serve, Kesha corrected. But when the mission needs someone who can go where men can't, who can walk unnoticed into a room full of danger, well, sometimes rules bend. Costanos shifted uncomfortably. Morrison, maybe we should. No, Morrison snapped. Let her finish. I want to hear this. Tell me, he said, leaning forward. How many high-value targets have you eliminated, Colonel Movie Star? Kesha's lips curved into a faint smile, not of pride, but of decision. Do you really want to know? She asked, pulling her phone from her pocket. Because I can show you exactly how many. But once I do, there's no going back. The bar was still. No one even breathed. You'll have to live with the fact, she continued softly, that you spent the last 15 minutes mocking someone who could have killed you in 12 different ways before your partner even noticed. Every man in the bar froze where he stood. Morrison's instinct screamed at him to back down. But pride, that old, dangerous drug, won again. Show me, he said, his voice rough. And when you can't prove it, you'll apologize right here. Kesha nodded slowly. Deal. But when I prove it, you'll do something for me. What's that supposed to mean? Costanos muttered. You'll call your base, Kesha said evenly. Ask for Commander Richards. When he answers, say these exact words, Sir, we're at Murphy's Bar with Kesha Williams, and we'd like to confirm her military identity. Morrison froze. The name hit him like lightning. Commander Richards was his commanding officer, a man both feared and admired. You know Commander Richards? Kesha smiled faintly. Let's just say we have history. In fact, he's the one who told me about this place. Said it was full of young SEALs who could use a lesson in humility. The blood drained from Morrison's face. This wasn't random. She had come here deliberately. He'd walked right into it. Still, with every eye in the bar on him, he couldn't back down. With shaking hands, he pulled out his phone and dialed. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Commander Richards, came the sharp voice on the other end. Sir, it's Sergeant Morrison. I'm at Murphy's bar with a civilian who claims to know you. Name's Kesha Williams. The silence that followed felt endless. Morrison thought the call had dropped. Then, finally, the voice came back, lower, strained, and filled with something Morrison had never heard before: respect. And fear. Morrison, Richard said slowly. Are you telling me you're confronting Kesha Williams in a bar? The SEAL's stomach turned to stone. Sir, she was making claims about military service, and we just wanted to verify. Put her on the phone, Richard snapped. Morrison hesitated only a second before handing it to Kesha. She took it calmly, walked a few paces away, and began speaking in a tone too low to hear. The room stayed dead silent. An older man wearing a Navy veteran's cap approached the two SEALs. You boys have no idea who you're messing with, do you? Morrison turned to the older man, still gripping his drink though his hand trembled slightly. What are you talking about, old man? The veteran's eyes were steady. That woman, he said quietly, nodding toward Kesha, who was still speaking softly on the phone. I never met her, but I've heard stories. Afghanistan. 2010, missions that never officially happened. Costanos frowned. Stories? The old man's jaw tightened. The kind that keep generals awake at night. The kind that make 3-star officers answer their phones at 2 in the morning without asking questions. Morrison's throat felt dry. He glanced at Kesha again. She wasn't just talking anymore, she was typing on another phone, her fingers moving fast, sending messages to multiple contacts. In the window's reflection, he could see it clearly. She's calling people, Costanos whispered, panic creeping into his voice. Man, what is she doing? Kesha ended her call, turned, and walked back toward them. Her expression hadn't changed, but something in her eyes had, a glacial calm that carried authority. She handed the phone back to Morrison. Commander Richards wants to talk to you again. Morrison hesitated, then brought the phone to his ear. Sir, it's Morrison. Richards' voice cut through him like a whip. You and Costanos will stay exactly where you are until I arrive. Do not leave the bar. Do not speak to anyone. And if I hear you've said one more disrespectful word to her, I'll personally make sure you spend the rest of your careers cleaning latrines in Alaska. Do you understand me? Sir, we didn't mean. Silence, Richards barked. 20 minutes. The line went dead. Morrison stared at the phone in disbelief, then at Costanos, pale, wide-eyed, speechless. What the hell is going on? He whispered. Kesha sat down again, calm as ever, and ordered another whiskey. You wanted to know about my tattoo, she said evenly. You'll find out soon enough. Even the bartender's hands shook as he poured the drink. Morrison tried to recover his composure. Listen, he began carefully, if we made a mistake. Kesha turned, cutting him off with a look sharp enough to silence him. If, she echoed, her tone quiet but firm. You've spent 30 minutes calling me a liar, mocking my service, and questioning my integrity. Now you want to use the word if? She took a slow sip of whiskey, her eyes never leaving his. Tell me, Sergeant. Are you familiar with the term above black? The words froze both men in place. Above black, the phrase whispered only in the most secure corridors. It meant operations so secret, they didn't officially exist. That doesn't exist, Costanos stammered. Exactly, Kesha replied, her voice soft but laced with iron. Just like I wasn't officially in Afghanistan in 2009. Just like that photograph was never officially taken. Just like the two of you will never officially be recorded for humiliating someone who served 5 years in the darkest places on Earth. Morrison's phone buzzed suddenly. A text message, from an unknown number. Asterisk, your superiors have been informed of the incident. Prepare for consequences, asterisk. He showed the screen to Costanos, whose face went white. How did she get our numbers? Kesha smiled faintly, not warmly, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone revealing only a fraction of her power. You really think people like me don't have resources? You think I survived 5 years in operations that don't exist without learning how to protect myself? She pulled out her phone again, scrolling through her contact list. Names flashed across the screen: high-ranking officers, commanders, officials. People who could end careers with a single call. The question now, she said, sliding the phone back into her pocket, isn't who I am. It's what you're willing to do to fix this monumental mistake. Both men stood frozen. For the first time that night, the legendary SEAL confidence was gone. They were staring at someone who could end their careers with one word, or worse, someone whose power didn't need to be proven to exist. The older veteran stepped closer, lowering his voice. If you're smart, son, you'll start apologizing now, he said. Pray she's more forgiving than you were to her. Kesha finished her drink and glanced at her watch. Commander Richards should be here in about 10 minutes, she said calmly. You might want to use that time to think very carefully about how you'll explain mistaking one of the most decorated operators in American military history for a lying civilian. Her words sank in like lead. Morrison felt his knees weaken. Costanos stood frozen, his lips trembling but unable to form words. Because believe me, Kesha continued, her eyes locking on them with quiet authority, when this night is over, you'll learn that underestimating the wrong person can cost far more than you ever imagined. The air in Murphy's bar was thick with tension, the silence broken only by the hum of neon and the clink of a single ice cube sliding in a glass. Then came the low rumble of engines outside. 3 black military vehicles pulled up in formation, stopping sharply in front of the bar. Through the window, Morrison and Costanos watched armed personnel step out with precision and discipline. This wasn't a regular visit. This was a full response. The door swung open with force. Commander Richards entered first, flanked by Colonel Martinez, head of Special Operations, and Major Thompson from Internal Affairs. Their faces were carved in fury and disbelief. Where are they? Richards demanded. Kesha pointed wordlessly. The commander's boots struck the floor with sharp, measured steps until he stood face to face with Morrison and Costanos. His glare could have cut steel. You two, he said in a low, thunderous tone, just made the biggest mistake of your military careers. Sir, we didn't know, Costanos started. Silence. Richards barked. The sound echoed through the bar, making everyone flinch. You humiliated, disrespected, and questioned the service of one of the most decorated operators this country has ever produced. His gaze softened slightly as he turned toward Kesha, who sat calm and poised on her stool. Then, in a moment that left the entire bar stunned, Commander Richards stood at attention and gave her a perfect military salute. Colonel Williams, he said, his voice now filled with respect. On behalf of our entire unit, I apologize for the disgraceful behavior of these men. The word colonel hit like a thunderclap. Morrison's world tilted. Colonel Kesha Williams. Not a civilian. Not a myth. A living legend. Kesha rose slowly, meeting the commander's salute with a nod. Thank you, Richards, she said evenly. But I think your men deserve to know exactly who they were talking to. Richards turned back to the 2 SEALs, his expression now almost pitying. This woman you mocked, he said, is Colonel Kesha Williams, former commander of the most classified unit in existence. For 15 years, she led missions that saved thousands of American lives in territories where we were never officially present. He paused to let that sink in. The tattoo you ridiculed, he continued, represents 5 impossible operations completed successfully, missions so critical that their failure could have altered world history. Morrison felt the blood drain from his face. His throat was dry, his mind numb. She retired 3 years ago with full honors, Richards said. And you too, with a few years of field experience and too much arrogance, had the nerve to call her a liar. Sir, we didn't know, Costanos started. Silence. Richards barked. The sound echoed through the bar, making everyone flinch. You humiliated, disrespected, and questioned the service of one of the most decorated operators this country has ever produced. His gaze softened slightly as he turned toward Kesha, who sat calm and poised on her stool. Then, in a moment that left the entire bar stunned, Commander Richards stood at attention and gave her a perfect military salute. "Colonel Williams," he said, his voice now filled with respect. "On behalf of our entire unit, I apologize for the disgraceful behavior of these men." The word colonel hit like a thunderclap. Morrison's world tilted. Colonel Kesha Williams. Not a civilian. Not a myth. A living legend. Kesha rose slowly, meeting the commander's salute with a nod. "Thank you, Richards," she said evenly. "But I think your men deserve to know exactly who they were talking to." Richards turned back to the two SEALs, his expression now almost pitying. "This woman you mocked," he said, "is Colonel Kesha Williams, former commander of the most classified unit in existence. For 15 years, she led missions that saved thousands of American lives in territories where we were never officially present." He paused to let that sink in. "The tattoo you ridiculed," he continued, "represents 5 impossible operations completed successfully, missions so critical that their failure could have altered world history." Morrison felt the blood drain from his face. His throat was dry, his mind numb. "She retired 3 years ago with full honors," Richards said. "And you too, with a few years of field experience and too much arrogance, had the nerve to call her a liar." 6 months later, the world had changed for them. The Operation Humility Elite Training Center stood as Kesha Williams' legacy, born from that night at Murphy's Bar. The same place now carried a plaque near the door that read, "Official Establishment of Honor, General Kesha Williams." Yes. General. The first black woman in U.S. Special Operations history to reach that rank. Every morning, Morrison and Costanos woke at 4:30 a.m. sharp. Training was relentless: physical drills, tactical simulations, lessons in leadership, and above all, respect. "Sergeants." Kesha's voice echoed across the field one morning. "Tell me the difference between strength and power." Morrison stood straight, sweat dripping down his neck. "Strength is what you demonstrate, General. Power is what you don't have to prove." Kesha smiled, just a small, approving curve of her lips. They had learned. Months of discipline had reshaped them into something new, soldiers who led with humility. Her methods were spreading across bases nationwide, changing the face of military leadership. Costanos, once cocky and loud, now led diversity workshops teaching unconscious bias to new recruits. Morrison became an instructor, sharing his story as a lesson in humility. "Never underestimate anyone," he told his students. "That mistake almost ended my career." Kesha's tattoo, the same one mocked that night, became a symbol studied in academies worldwide, representing courage, wisdom, and silence in service. In her final address to a new class of cadets, she said, "True leadership doesn't come from how many missions you've completed or how loud your voice is. It comes from the respect you show for those who came before you. Real power never needs to shout to be respected." And with that, General Kesha Williams turned a night of humiliation into a legacy of transformation, proving once and for all that dignity always triumphs over arrogance.